I think it's back. I'm not dropping frames, so we're good.
You seem to be good on my end as well. I mean, my major problem with PvP right now, aside from the fact that I really wish I could play my Merc in PvP, is it's actually like the matchmaking and things like that for ranked arenas. It's just
Is it
piss
too
poor.
slow, or is it
It's just
mismatching?
bad. It's just terrible mismatches
You could end
all
up
the
with
time.
4 stealthers versus no stealthers.
It's not even the class. Like, I'd be totally fine with completely random assortments of classes, but I mean, I'm a relatively high-rated player, and I'm getting queued with people who are under 1,000 rating almost every game.
Are you still
It's just-
tracking
How
that?
long are your queues, by the way? Because that could be a function of not many people queuing.
Depends on the time of day. I mean, I have a whole spreadsheet with it. Anywhere from 4 minutes to 25, 30, depending on the amount of people in queue.
That seems like a fairly long time.
I've sat in queue for 12 minutes to get matched with people who are at 800 rating. I've sat in queue for 4 minutes and gotten matched with people at 600 rating. So I'm convinced it's just random at this point.
I think it's a function of the pool. I don't know. This is like tied into GSF matchmaking too. I think that's going to be somewhat better when they talk about rewards, and this is segueing into we're supposed to be getting news about the Season 2 rewards this week, which is less time than we had for Season 1. So that's going to result, as opposed to last time where it resulted in a big spike of activity, the spike's going to be much bigger, and it's going to result in a mad dash to whatever rating threshold they set. If
Wait, did they
even do it
release
that
the
way
date
again.
for Season 2?
Alex Mon
2.9.
Yeah, 2.9 is when the
Is it
season
really?
ends. Yeah, so you don't have a lot
Fuck.
of time.
No.
Yeah.
Damn
Well,
it.
here's
Queue
what's
up now,
interesting to
Jared.
me. They said that Season 3 would start basically at 210, or maybe it was literally at 2.9 when Season 2 ends. And they said Season 3 would end when the expansion hits. And they said that seasons would be 2 to 3 months long. So, to me, that says that there's definitely another patch beyond 2.10 that is not the expansion. And that kind of annoys me.
I would doubt that. I think you're going to go into another preseason.
I would think that will be the case. I mean, I'm seeing maybe I said this in chat that there's people like the ratings and things. When people start getting farmed, they just stop queuing, and that's the major problem too. Because matchmaking doesn't put people who are getting farmed with other people who are getting farmed.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you look at Top 5 PvP, you literally cannot queue imp side during prime time if you have any desire to gain rating, because there are 8 to 10 players on Republic side who are all good, and they will get matched with you and a random assortment of people under 1,000 rating, and you will lose over and over again. And there's nothing you can do about it because you can't carry 4 people.
Do you see
You
that
will
being-
just
Fair, it's only carrying 3 people.
Just queuing up at between 8 and midnight server time. That's just like, hey, I'm gonna throw away 50 rating tonight.
Yep.
Do you see that getting better or worse when they release the rewards? Because the pool's going to get bigger, but you don't know if better players are going to be in the pool.
It doesn't matter if there's better players as long as you're getting matched against the same. Like, it's fine to lose a match to good teams, like good players in your team. Like, you're only losing 3 to 5 rating if they're much higher than you, which is totally fine. It's just that when you're queuing against that 3 to 5 rating every single game, you're just going to lose all night long. And that's just, it's not fun, and people stop queuing, which leads to the same problem because then there's less people playing, so you end up playing against the same good people over and over again. It just snowballs into sad.
As an aside, this is exactly what happens to GSF on every server.
Cross server would fix this.
Yes. Cross server...
Or it would help. It
does
would
not-
help.
Yeah, cross server...
It would fix it, because if there was a pool 4 or 5 times larger, this would not be a problem at all. 3 times larger. Twice as large.
And this is...
I mean, Harbinger has more PvP rank pops than Pot 5 on bad hours on bad days than Pot 5 has at peak hours. And rating conversations that you guys are having talks about, like with being a 1,500 plus rating with 800, I don't see that talked about on Harbinger nearly as much. So I think it's definitely a player pool thing, like you guys were saying.
No, Harbinger is definitely the biggest... I think it is the biggest server in on the continent, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we get APAC players. So we get everyone on the West Coast. We get a lot of people from the Midwest or like the South that is in the middle area of the country, like you and I in Texas.
You're in Texas and you used to play on Harbinger, so yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
it's going to be the
lot of
same
Texans
ping either
play.
direction.
Yeah, I have literally 63 to 72 ping on Harbinger, and I have 68 to 75 on Pot 5. It's like the
Yeah,
same thing.
I think I'm 3 to 4 less on Harbinger.
Yeah, and it's basically just if you look on there, like for instance, I was doing this earlier. I was raiding randomly a stupid story mode at like 3 in the morning, and on Fleet there were 15 people on Fleet in Pot 5. You go to Harbinger, there's 2 fleets on Harbinger pub side, and both have more than 150 people on it because of APAC. If Pot 5 had people from different time zones, this wouldn't be as bad. But you only have realistically East Coast and like east of the Rocky Mountains playing in Pot 5. So like time zones are pretty specific when it comes to PvP.
BS.
And
You got
crack
some
time
West
zone.
Coasters.
You have you, Dom. You and Jen now.
Me and Jen.
Yeah, and Dom, your ping is a joke, and your ping is
His
actually
ping is a joke
worse.
for different reasons.
But his
Hot
ping
pockets,
is
basically.
worse
He
than
runs it through a
people
microwave.
who live in Europe and raid in America.
Yep,
It's actually
that's
worse.
fact.
Like
It looked
there's
his
a
face from
player,
committed.
there's a player that I talked to on Twitter, and he raids in Manticore. He's in England. I don't know which part, and if he's not actually in England and it's Ireland, I'm sorry, don't kill me,
No,
don't
I'm
get the
pretty sure it's
IRA on me.
England.
But he has less ping than Dom does ever in
Yeah,
his
it's like
worst moments.
120 or something.
It's so
Oh.
dumb.
I would kill for 120.
Yeah, and Thrax just said he gets 120 ping on Harbinger. That's
Literally
across
the country and the
the
ocean.
ocean.
Yeah, I should go play in Harbinger, because my character's
That's
there.
horseshit.
Yeah, I get good ping there.
Dom,
You can
would've
spread
been
the word of
banned
Thor to
for life.
Harbinger.
You would have been banned for life at like patch 1.3 on Harbinger. None of the things you do in Gen Chat would be acceptable on Harbinger.
Thor disagrees.
Thor, they would love, no. See, here's the thing. They would love Thor. They would hate Dom.
That's
So
impossible.
it's Pot 5.
Yeah, basically Pot 5 somehow is acceptable with Dom.
We love Dom.
I'm pretty
We're very
sure
awesome.
everybody loves me.
Pot 5 hates you, dumb.
Nah, they all love me.
There are disciples of Thor in general, chat. You guys don't know. I've seen them. I provoked disciples of Thor into praising him before.
One of my
Dom,
favorite
hubris needs
messages
to
I
have
ever
a
got
second guild.
was from some guy who said his kid was reading all the stuff I was saying in game, and he did a report on Norse mythology in school, and he got an A.
That's amazing.
Okay,
Is that PvP gear crack?
that's all I had on on PvP. If anybody wants to add anything.
Please get rid of the hybrids. Please do it. Please,
I
please,
do
please,
stop
please.
it. It's
Hybrid
frustrating as all
healers,
hell.
hybrid tanks. Please get rid of them, please.
So
I do have one
not
question on
hybrid
PvP
DPS.
though.
Hybrid DPS is fine because it doesn't give you something that is inherently stuck to a role, like large
How do you
amounts of
do
healing.
that then?
Ah.
How do you do that? How do you get rid of a hybrid?
Make you take your top talent.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You should have to go 36 points in one tree before it lets you touch another tree. That'll even help like casual levelers who don't really know what they're doing. If you force them to max out one tree before going into another tree.
It
Can we
will,
just talk about
but
how tanks shouldn't be allowed to be hybrid in any PvE or PvP setting because it inherently makes too much content considerably easier to heal through?
I mean, just if you look at PvP in ranked, every single assassin is playing like Dark Maul, which is a really, really silly spec that gives you 20k openers and also a guard and dark charge and all your tank cooldowns. It's silly.
let's actually. I want to touch on something Justin just said. Hybrid tanks in PvE. I think that's because way too many abilities in PvE are flagged as AoE.
Yeah, like Nephra's Dot, I can somehow like negate most of it with defensive roll by speccing into it when I'm like doing 3610 instead of
and
3682.
snipers can entrench it. There is no reason for the hardest hitting attack from the monsters in Bestia to be an AoE attack. The
Or
hardest hitting
they-
attack that they do should be single target to force tanks to be tanks and not hybrids.
Yeah, and like I know Tenebris said that. What did you say, Tenebris? 4 of the 5 fights in DP you do as hybrid because they just don't do any damage when you're in hybrid.
Yeah, I play 4 out of 5 as hybrid. And I mean, definitely 3, 4 I can, and I could do hybrid on Calpheus as well because inevitability is also AoE.
Yeah,
Well,
and I just
inevitability doesn't
ridiculous.
damage. I mean,
It does a lot of damage.
inevitability is the thing that one shots you.
Well, not inevitability.
He does like a
knockback.
knockback with it. Does
That
some
attack
damage.
hits really hard.
Okay. I mean, I bet he would probably just kill you if you were the tank at the end, though. if you weren't running the crystal.
It's not. That's the problem with hybrid is you don't lose much mitigation.
That may be okay.
Ascend
Yeah,
only
I'm
loses on the
thinking-
order of 2% single target mitigation.
I feel like a power tech loses more than that. I
Well,
just feel that way.
the power
Yeah,
tech
I'm not sure
hybrid
if
is
that's-
more DPS than it is tank, though.
I
That's the
know.
problem with that.
Yeah, you have to go way high
But-
up in the tree.
But like my issue with the hybrids is if we think about this, certain content that was easier to clear, if we look at it, if they weren't allowed to do hybrids, it would have been objectively harder. For instance, if you didn't have guilds doing 2 Sin hybrids, or even 2 PT hybrids, or a Sin PT hybrid on Brontes, if everyone was full tank, the healing check for final phase would have been way higher.
Yes,
And
and way less.
you wouldn't have almost 30 guilds getting Brontes pre-nerf, which is roughly what the number was. And if you couldn't
Tyrants
do...
too.
Oh,
Tyrants
Tyrants
a
would
bitch.
be a legitimate bitch if there were no hybrids.
Be
I
fun
just-
as hell.
And if you think about it, like the only thing that the hybrids really lose, and I mean they may lose a little mitigation, but let's be honest, what they lose is snap threat. They have no snap threat in hybrid, and
They have
all
very
that
little
means,
threat in general.
Well, yeah, but all that means is that DPS aggro drop on cooldown, and that isn't something that makes the fight harder for DPS. It just means it's one more button for us to keybind press more often. Like it doesn't make there is no downside to going hybrid in reality in this tier when there should be a huge downside to it.
I agree, and honestly, I'm not a big fan of hybrids in general, and I don't think the designers are either. Okay, let me take that back. There's no such thing as a combat team, but if they did exist, they probably wouldn't like hybrids.
I like it as worded.
And I've seen yellow posts to that effect. So to kill it, they definitely should do what Tenebris said and just make you take. Or was it Crack? Did you say that? Make you take the 36 point?
I
Whoever
said it a
that,
while ago. I don't
We've
know
all
if
said that at
Tenebris
some
listened
point.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably
mean-
the easiest way to do it. You could also do it by making hybrids really unattractive, by changing things around, but that's more work. The easiest way
Well,
to do it.
what you could do is
Well, if you look at the hybrid PT, that's really unattractive, and
yeah.
you still do it because it's so much better.
Yeah, 30% is too good to, to dissuade you, basically.
I think that the only way to keep hybrids alive and make it actually hard to choose if you want a hybrid is if the fight was made in such a way where if you lose aggro at all, shit dies immediately. Like the Marauder took aggro for 2 GCDs, he hit guarded, or he hit Undying Rage, and he's still dead. Like, that's the only way to me, because the only downside is like Tyrants on the opener. If people are fucking Bloodthirst and Adrenal on the opener, yeah, the tank is going to lose aggro in hybrid. It's going to happen. But there's not a realistic consequence for those things happening. And the biggest issue to me with Nightmare in general, and this is coming from someone who didn't do previous Nightmare tiers, so I was a filthy casual. So I feel like I can say this pretty confidently. There are not enough Nightmare mechanics that are actually Nightmare. Like when I did Calpheus the first time in Nightmare, it was a joke how easy it was. People were living in purple circles laughing at, oh, that's 6k, and the healers were still DPSing through most of the phases.
To do what you said, to make it so that DPS get one shot if they take aggro, you have to wildly increase the survivability of tanks.
I'd be fine with that.
PvP implications would be
Yeah.
catastrophic.
That could lead to consequences that you don't want.
That leads
That's
to
fair.
Darkness Assassins wearing DPS gear and destroying everything in sight.
Well,
Yeah,
I would
that's fair.
tie in the mitigation to their gear, and then give them a way bigger. This ability does more threat modifiers, and then reduce their main stat. I think that's how I would do it.
But even the base damage of abilities is tremendous already for some classes. Like PT tanks do a lot of damage. I don't even
Yeah.
know if you're aware of that.
But to have something like that, the gap between DPS healers survivability and tank survivability has to be large. Right now, it isn't very large. Tanks will live longer tanking something than I would, but it's not. They would not last significantly longer.
I think right now, at least in PvE, I can't speak to PvP with any relative competency, but with PvE, I think anyone could objectively agree, outside of the fact that hybrids are OP as hell, tanks are the one class of player in this game that could use a strong buff as a whole. Healers as a role are right now very overpowered. A good healer can heal through almost anything. A good DPS can DPS through entire phases, pushing things faster than you even intend them to be pushed through, because the DPS output currently in this game is higher than it is needed to be, except for 1 to 2 minutes in Phase 2. There's no other fight that requires anything near the output that we're capable of.
Are you implying that tanks should be able to make it so they take no damage to these top-tier bosses through some...
No, I don't think that. I think that they need... Like, in my opinion, tanks don't have as much aggro consistency as they could have. Like, yes, there are rotations that specifically guarantee you threat, of course. But at some point, with the amount of DPS we're doing, like, honestly, a rotation that a tank has should never have a taunt in it, except for taunt swaps that are required, mechanically speaking. Yes, you can have rotations where a taunt is somewhere in there to specifically raise your aggro based on where people are doing burst. But put it this way, in my opinion, when I do Carnage, I'm doing an opener that is retardedly high, even if I don't Adrenal or use Bloodthirst. I should never pull off of a tank in any spec that's not even the highest parsing spec, or at all, and I will. I will pull through a guard, and I'm not even the best Carnage Marauder out there. Any top Carnage Marauder will pull off of a tank with the Carnage opener. There should be a tank opener that guarantees you don't get pulled. That's my one issue with tanks, is that they don't have good enough snap threat right now.
You want a tank opener that doesn't rely on a taunt, then, because...
Yeah, because taunts are overused. Taunts are not being used as they were intended to be used. They're being used as regular rotation.
I agree with him, actually. And this is actually... When I played WoW, that's how it worked. Like, you were not pulling off of my Death Knight when I tanked on him. Not in the beginning of the fight, especially. No matter what you did. Snap threat was considerable across the board in that game for every tank class. The only class that comes close to that now is Assassins. Full tank Assassins, not hybrid.
No. I've done the math. Carnage and Arsenal are physically impossible to hold threat off without taunting. It is not possible. Well, even if everything crits, you will still lose aggro.
Come close to it, not like...
No, it's actually several thousand threat behind that you just don't have.
The Carnage opener is literally capable of higher than 10k for the first 20 seconds, and it's actually absurd. Like, it's not just a second of 10k. It's... Things get bad when I use Force Scream. It gets worse when I use when I have the third tick of Ravage. It's actually unfair.
You actually cannot hold aggro over openers of Arsenal or Carnage. It is physically impossible, even if you got an amazing crit run.
And that's for Assassins. The other two tanks are worse.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's pulling off of a Guardian is very easy.
Well, the Guardian is the worst.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, I shouldn't be able to pull off as a healer. That shouldn't be a thing.
Healing threat's outrageous in this game.
And I can do it at will.
On Bestia, if you're healing as you're supposed to be healing in the first 20 to 30 seconds,
you guys had to guard me and I would pull through that.
Yeah, you pull through my guard.
Well, that's because that mechanic, though, gimps tank threat, or damage, to convert to threat.
That's true.
But that shouldn't be
the double
thing.
tank is... Well, actually, when I've tanked that fight...
See, but, that means that your healer threat, because what are tanks doing on the first boss there, when they have two monsters, they must be doing, 1/10 of the damage you normally do. So they're not necessarily doing 1/10 of the threat, but they're doing significantly less. They would have to nerf your healer threat probably by at least 50% to prevent you from pulling there.
I don't know. Recently, when I've tanked that fight, and when I've watched Tenebris tank that fight, he hasn't lost those guys in quite a long time. And neither,
you're talking about on which fight? On
Bestia,
which fights?
The double monsters.
Oh well, Bestia. Double monsters doesn't get pulled, but me and Deeps pull within the first 10 GCDs usually. Because we're not going to not open up as hard as we can on that fight.
No,
but it's
course.
we literally pull for 1 GCD and then it's gone. Because tanks aren't bad.
No,
no, actually, when I tank doubles, a healer pulls off every single time. I just specifically know when it's going to happen at this point, so I have a taunt ready for it. I have to let the monster walk about halfway to the healers and then taunt to get it back.
Chad is actually bringing up...
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Is my threat as hybrid PT better than yours as hybrid assassin? It has to be, since I'm taking so many DPS talents. Because I have not had that problem recently.
I pull off... I don't know. I can't speak for every class, but me personally, I can pull off of a hybrid PT on Brontes on Kefis faster than I can...
That depends, Ram, on how many
about
shock
Bestia
procs I get in my opener. Because I do not have a guaranteed way to get Force Lightning as a hybrid without waiting every 9 seconds.
I see. Okay, go ahead, Justin. You were going to say something?
So in chat, there are multiple people talking about when DPS should or should not drop threat, and someone had said what helps is DPS does half the rotation, then drop threat. I disagree with that because half their rotation is a relative term, and there are like 3 to 4 different ways. Pretty much each class can pull if the tank either resists one of their main moves, or if they don't crit on it, or if something doesn't go right. So, like, I don't know how you pick an exact moment. What I do, although I don't do it as well as I should, as Tenebris can attest, what you should do, at least for my class as a Marauder, I wait until the tank taunts, then I drop threat, because I can hit a cooldown, take some damage, and their threat that they've got off of the taunting off of my actual aggro, not like the force cam mode none aggro, helps their threat overall more than me just fucking dropping all the time. But that's just how I do it. I don't know if that's actually the correct way to do it. It's just how it's worked for me. Because if I remember right, taunts are multiplicative. Isn't that correct, Tenebris?
Yes, taunts are multiplicative. Off the highest, it gives you highest threat plus 15%.
All right.
It sets your threat to highest threat plus 15%. It should clarify.
Yeah.
Let's move on a little bit to the future of the game. A lot of people looked at 2.9 in the PTS. The main feature of 2.9 being housing. What does housing do for players like us? Because, I mean, I've spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours throwing together a house, and this is not the way it's going to look on live. I just kind of just threw random shit up. And I don't know what I'm going to get out of this on live. I'm still going to do it. I just don't think I'm going to care after I'm done.
I literally can't care about housing, but I mean, I'm probably in the minority of people. Like, I would be perfectly happy if they told me I could buy a house, and I just didn't, and just never had one, and just wouldn't let out my day.
Are you going to do it specifically for legacy storage?
Yes.
Because that's like the only reason I can think of.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I'm probably going to go in there. I'm probably going to throw up all my nightmare rating achievement things on the wall, drop my mounts, and then never look at it again, ever.
I could see myself spending quite a bit of time on strongholds just based on like being somewhat OCD about how things look, and I guess if prestige becomes a quote-unquote thing that people care about, I will want to have a stronghold that looks good enough to be respectable, and I'll be keeping up with it.
And maybe the question's unfair because the last 2 patches had the only content really in them was specifically aimed at players like us. 2.7 was DF and 2.8 was DP. So I'm sure it's just the casuals' turn, and they're getting something completely new, which is good for them. But I cannot imagine caring about housing once my one house is going to be done.
Well, I mean, when I said I don't care about it, I mean, I'm actually extremely very super like off the wall excited it's going to be in the game. Like, I'm not going to enjoy it.
Oh,
but,
yeah,
I
no.
mean, I don't enjoy everything about the game. So I mean, that's fine, and I'm really glad that people who do care about that kind of thing are getting something to keep playing the game that we all like. So it's great that it's in the game. I'm really happy. Just not my thing.
Yes, I agree. I think it's going to draw and retain players who are into that kind of thing.
I think
and
that
thus
it's great
increase the player base.
that it happened. Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's great that it's in the game, even though I don't know if I'm going to care about it as much as some people will, because if this feels pretty substantial for the people it's intended for, and this is what they spent quite a few months working on, and to me, now that they've done that, they can now refocus some of their attention towards stuff I care about. So, like, they've got it all out of the way in one big chunk, where it's like, okay, here's housing, or okay, here's GSF, and now I don't have to think about where they're putting their resources to things that I don't care about. Because now that it's there, since Star Wars as a whole kind of, they sort of, okay, this month you're getting this month you're getting that, and then you don't get anything for 5 months until, oh, it's time to look at rating again. But if, with housing being a thing that is this substantial, I just don't think that we're going to have to worry about another extremely, not casual, but extremely not raid/PvP oriented thing is going to be put in development for a little while.
It also seems to be extremely, extremely well designed. So, like, I'm really happy that it's going to be a quality addition, because anytime there's something quality in the game, even if I don't like it, it raises the overall experience of the game, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. Putting on my robe and wizard hat for a moment and looking at this as from an immersion standpoint, why would any of our characters, the Grand Champion of the Great Hunt, Cypher 9, Darth Nox, or the Emperor's Wrath, why would any of them choose to live on Tatooine?
Because of the sunset.
I could see Grand Champion of the Great Hunt living on Tatooine because Tatooine is such a, famous area of the galaxy in Star Wars
It's famous
for
to
bad people.
us. It's famous to people outside the universe.
Well, yeah, but also, oh god, I'm about to put on my RP hat, but when you read the EU before it went from canon to legend status, there were a ton of books where bounty hunters were based in Tatooine for the majority of their time. I mean, if you just watch Return of the Jedi, how many bounty hunters that were relevant came through Jabba's palace? It would not be
lot,
a stretch.
Actually. It was Dengar
No,
and Boba Fett.
That's like two of the most important ones in the meta of bounty hunting at the time in their area. But if you ever read Tales of the Bounty Hunters or things like that, Tatooine was a pretty prominent area overall, and I could see them wanting to have a place to stay near Jabba's palace, roughly. So I could get the idea of it. I wouldn't personally want a Tatooine stronghold, but I can see it.
But Tatooine, and then playing the anti-Tatooine card a little bit harder, those bounty hunters were there because of Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt was there because the Empire did not really give a shit about Tatooine.
True.
Governments, and 3 out of the 4 player characters on Empire side are high up in the Empire government. Governments don't give a shit about Tatooine. Outside of, very rare occasions like that Zerka thing. So I just don't see the reason why any of our characters would want to live there.
Yeah,
Maybe
I guess
the
that
bounty
goes
hunter.
back to just although I can say this, I could see Sith Inquisitor on RP servers having a bunch of good reasons because
Really?
the whole yeah, I could. I can't see it if you're going by the story, but you got to remember that RP servers kind of ignore the story and make up their own, and I could see a Darth Maul like character being in a very obscure place and a shitty place
If I
until they see
really
fit
put
to
on my
unveil.
robe and wizard hat and pretend that my character isn't the person in the story like an RPer would, then yes, I could see that.
Rob, do you have an actual robe and wizard hat? Because if you do, you need to go put it
start
on.
Yeah,
wearing
you
it.
need to go
You
put
need
it
to
on.
start wearing it.
Well,
I don't
think about
actually.
Can we
Think about,
pretend
the
your
Jedi
cowboy
Consular.
hat's a wizard hat?
Yes. Go ahead, Tenemis. you were saying?
Shotgun
that?
I
cowboy
mean,
hat.
think about the Jedi Consular, who's the Obi-Wan Kenobi archetype.
I thought it was
you
more like
know,
Yoda.
Either way, I mean, Yoda lived on a desert
Okay, yeah.
on a backwater planet. I mean, not everything is Imperial.
Sure, I can see Republic
Smuggler
doing
could
that. Maybe.
could also choose Tatooine as a base. That could happen.
Batman would
Obviously,
be on
bounty
Tatooine.
hunters like Tatooine for bounty contract week.
For bounty contract week. My immersion, 1 week of 1 month.
Batman would be on Tatooine.
I doubt it.
In the caves?
Probably be in
Maybe he's
Drummond
really
Koss.
lazy
It
and he
looks like
doesn't want to
Gotham.
travel.
Let's be
So
real.
he just wants
Jabba
to
the
sit
Hutt
there.
is Batman gone to seed.
Batman would be on Nar Shaddaa or Tatooine. He would not be in Gossett.
I don't know.
That's kind of
It's
true
looking-
because
it's looking pretty
well,
sketchy
Batman
out here.
Batman's
as we
always in
all know-
shitty areas
As we all know,
crime
the
wise.
Imperial agent is Batman. So
Well, my stronghold's on Drummond Koss, so
Rom, that's because you do not like things that are different.
you're Batgirl, so that doesn't count.
You're a
Dude.
bad girl.
You know
Oh,
what the hell you.
wait,
I have
got
a
it.
mill. I have an operative.
You're gonna be
Yet
crippled.
another reason.
You're on Drummond
GSI
Koss
quest.
for the wheelchair access because you know you're gonna get your spine snapped, and there aren't any ramps on fucking Nar Shaddaa.
Telling you, bro.
Okay.
GSI.
The other thing 2.9 is bringing that is actually of interest to players like those in D&T, or maybe of interest to us, are guild ships and planetary conquest. Conveniently, these are things that are not included in this current patch. But there's still enough to go on, to speculate on. And so I kind of want to go around the table and see what people want out of that kind of thing.
Hold on, before we start on that, just because I saw it, are they fixing the bug where when you log into your character screen, your dude's way far out and the ship's all dark?
I hope not.
They're supposed to, but Tate did make note of the fact that a lot of people enjoy it more.
Yeah, I'll be really pissed if they do.
Yeah, I want all my characters to be like fucking dolly zoomed out with like a deep background. I want that.
Yeah.
I want it
Sorry.
for my immersion. Damn it.
I just zoned out of a character and logged into another one, saw that, and thought of it.
From what I understand, conquests are going to be worth doing because of the rewards. Like, they will give you resource nodes that you can put in your stronghold and harvest, which is pretty cool. I've actually mined some of the resource nodes they give you for free, and they only give, like, last time I mined a dish thing, it gave me 1 Bondite Jetsam, which is totally not enough for it being on a 4-hour fucking cooldown. But if we start getting, like, enriched Durasteel, rarer stuff like that, it's totally worth it. I went to the vendor for planetary conquest equipment. There's a couple of things that are interesting, and one of them is for gameplay. This is something to do with our flagship. Apparently, that's going to be tied into conquests. You can call down a starfighter flyby. It's an item. You have to spend a crafted thing on it. And what it does is it calls in a starfighter strafing run that knocks out planetary defense shielding and does heavy damage to the area around your target. Which would lead me to believe that the gameplay of Planetary Conquest is very much like a siege, siege gameplay, which really interests me because that would. My problem with housing is that there's no gameplay involved. I mean,
You mean like connection to the main part of the game?
No, like there's no gameplay. Like I'm placing objects, but I'm not doing anything. I'm not fighting. I'm not,
See, that's gameplay to some people. Like, this is basically Minecraft and SWTOR, and for all of us that are like, this is literally nothing to do, there will be people who are stupidly rich who will make shit look absurdly good.
Yes, it is gameplay. It's not gameplay that I care about. But conquests, if it is like a siege type thing, just based on this one item that I saw on one vendor, I think that could be pretty exciting. And I don't know. I mean, what do y'all think?
Come back anytime.
The other thing is, our guild is pretty small, so I cannot conceive of a way to compete against like the huge guilds.
You mean like Empire of Ta and stuff on
Yeah,
our server,
people
where they have
who
literally
Zerg
2
recruit.
guilds?
Yes. So
That's a major concern of mine.
That is definitely a concern, and I don't know if we're just going to start recruiting for conquests. That would be weird. But we are going to have to start crafting for conquests, by the way, because like I said, you buy that flyby with crafted materials.
I think that there's a way for smaller progression raid guilds to be relevant in Conquest without becoming a let's recruit all of the casuals just for that reason. And I think a way to do it would actually improve the raid player base. Like right now, there are kind of 2 categories. There are people who clear shit really quick. Then there are people who don't clear shit really quick. But there's a third group that people on our level or even on the other level don't talk about. And it's people that cannot clear things, but can do hard modes, whether it because of group comp, because of they have to carry too many people, and it's hard for them to go anywhere past hard mode. But in my opinion, if guilds like ours had like right now, we don't have a second group. We have 1 run. We need a second group, which we can do if we just add like 1 or 2 more people. Because right now the issue
we have enough alts. It's just
we don't have enough alts that want to that are either
Group 2
competent.
is not an alt group, though.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Okay.
But here's what we need in addition to a group. I don't say we need it, but here's what could work in addition to a group 2 as a concept. I don't know if it works for D&T, but just in general. What if these guilds, these progression guilds, had their progression teams, and in addition, they had 1 or 2 hard mode teams that are like a farm system. Like, this isn't the fucking Yankees. It's their AAA team. And that AAA team, those are people. Those are bodies. Those are accounts that can help you with conquests. They can help you with other aspects of guild flagship. And in addition to that, when the content goes stale, and all of a sudden, the difference between us raiding and us not raiding is forcing somebody who doesn't like the certain group class they're playing on. Like, for instance, Tenebris doesn't like tanking right now. And sometimes, if he didn't tank, there would be no run. What if, in those moments, it could be, all right, we will pull up 1 person from the farm team They're going to get better at playing this goddamn game, and then the next tier, that one person they pulled up, he's another person that you can count on. Right now, there's not a single progression guild outside of maybe 7 Stuck before they had all their issues where you could really say they had that.
Hates you.
Well,
does that.
yeah,
yes.
functionally,
But
Justin,
Hates You
that
has
is
two
exactly...
teams that are actually... Hates You has 2 teams that are nightmare. I'm not talking about they have 2 teams that can do 4 out of 5, because there are groups that can do that. I'm talking about an actual farm system, which Hates You doesn't have, because if they take from Group 2 can't run.
Well, okay, how do you take the tank from Group 2 in your scenario without preventing Group 2 from running?
The Group 2 is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Group 2.
But your farm take the tank from your farm team, like right now.
Your farm team's not an 8-man. Your farm team is a 16-man, and it's hard mode, and it's not nightmare. Therefore, the competency level is lower because it's 16-man hard mode.
Well, look at it from their perspective. Look at it from their perspective.
That doesn't teach classes. That doesn't teach people how to be raid aware. It teaches people how to clear content and how to give mode.
One, look at it from their perspective. Like, why would they be in a Death and Taxes to be on a 16-man farm team that isn't even the size or the difficulty that the main raid runs? Like, what's their incentive?
I mean, to that same effect, what's the point of being in any progression team if you're not guaranteed Group 1? Like, I don't... Like, in all honesty, like, you say that, like, what's the point if you're not going to be in Group 1? Ask the people that are in Group 2 of Hates You. Ask the people that were in Group 2 and Group 3 of Zors that were not in Group 1 alts. Like, it's a thing. You just have to find people that actually want that to be a thing. Like, there aren't that many people in Death and Taxes that don't want to be Group 1, but I, for one, if we had a Group 2, would be totally fine being in Group 2 if my DPS wasn't good enough for Group 1. These people exist. They're out there. They're just not you. Like, Rom, I doubt you would be very keen on not being in Group 1, but there will be snipers who are good enough to clear content who are okay with it.
That is functionally how Group 2 was when we had it, by the way.
Yeah, but Group 2,
is saying,
from what I remember, Group 2 did not exist in a meaningful way except for to piss people off in Group 1 and carry some people that shouldn't have been in Group 2. Functionally speaking.
Yes, but what I'm speaking more to what Milos is typing in chat. Group 2 through 4 of Zors was, quote, 70% alts, which is how we actually ran Group 2 in Death and Taxes. It was mostly our alts. Mostly our alts and the 1 through 3 people who weren't able to run in Group 1 that week.
Yeah, and that works well too if you have like an 11-man roster
Which is
for
what we
progression. So then you have the 2-3 extras. Well, they still want to run every week. You have 5 capable alts. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't necessarily know if you should classify that as Group 2, though.
But what I'm getting at is, how do you retain those people when they know they're not getting in unless something bad happens? I don't know how to do
that. If I wasn't in Group 1, if we had a similar thing to that, I just know my nature, it's very competitive. It would drive me to be better at the game if that's something I really wanted. And to be basically, at the very least, if I was in, it wouldn't be a drop in skill level, it wouldn't be a drop in healing numbers. It would be comparable at the very least. And I know that's my makeup. I don't know how everybody else is, but if I wasn't in Group 1, it would drive me to be good enough to be in Group 1.
It's definitely true.
I think what Dr. Blaze is saying in chat is good too, or is pretty accurate. The people who good enough to clear hard mode want to try Nightmare. The people who've cleared Nightmare don't want to waste their time, so it's not a good mix. That's kind of
true.
what happens.
That's true, but I literally would not exist in this guild if that was absolutely true.
But that's kind of like what happened in Moxa when we did that. We had 3 Nightmare groups for 8-man, 1 16-man chat itself, and we had 3 farm groups, and it just kind of didn't work out that way.
Okay. Let's backtrack a little bit because we've gone off on a big tangent. Back to conquests.
What can I get for you?
I've driven around on a lot of the planets. It seems they're all broken up into sectors. And I've driven through and it says stuff like no guild controls this sector on like the Ilum Eastern Ice Shelf. So maybe there's just way too much real estate in SWTOR for one guild to effectively dominate for an extended period of time. Maybe that's the way they're going to avoid large guilds owning a server. Because if everything's split up like that, it's going to be pretty hard just to take a planet.
Right, but like somebody like Tall is going to have enough people.
I don't think they're going to have enough good people, and enough good people all online at one time. Because
Also-
I would put up our group against any player from TAW. Come on.
No, I agree, but they have an entire maxed out roster. We have 11 people.
Well, but
I
you
think
know,
we're going to have to
there's another
hold
thing.
at least a sector. I don't know. It depends
There's
on the
there's
gameplay.
another idea. What if BioWare makes it to where if you conquest a planet, the next event you're not allowed to conquest?
That would be another good way to do it. You're not
Yeah,
allowed to
then you
conquest
don't-
that planet.
Yeah, or like for instance, let's say let's say for random ideas, hates you conquests Ilum. They get the whole planet. Next week they announce that the conquest planet is fucking Narshada. Hates you is not allowed to compete in that conquest. Every other guild is. You don't even have to worry about
Why?
big guilds. Well, just like if you're talking about there being an issue with like it being unfair with certain guilds being able to
I don't
conquest
think
every
that they're
planet.
I don't think it's gonna work that way, Justin, because it would. I think it would be bad design for them to tell a guild you don't get to play this game this week.
Yeah.
It would have to be you can't conquer this particular sector.
It
of
would,
this
it would
particular
have
planet.
to be
Yeah.
this planet or this sector or however it's broken up. But I don't think that planetary conquest is going to be one planet at a time. I think
But
it's going to be the entire list of planets they have worked into the system.
Probably. But the other side of that is, say Hates You goes and Ponzo all over Ilum, right? It's going to drive people to either A, grow larger as a guild and absorb more competent people, which will help PvP and PvE for that guild, or it'll cause guilds to kind of group up and do things, and it'll cause more kind of it'll create a better environment for all these guilds, the smaller guilds, to coexist within the same server, because you'll have a lot more integration between all these smaller guilds that otherwise wouldn't. If you need to, go up and say TAW goes and puts 200 people in an area, or however it works.
I think it'll either do that, CAC, or like the small guilds who are not like, how do I say this? Who are not as concrete in their foundation. I think those guilds will break up and be absorbed into other guilds. Because I think, and this is going back to a discussion we had earlier, I think that Conquest might be their method of, might be Bioware's method of building guild loyalty. Because, like, I don't know, Death and Taxes is not going to break up and go into other guilds for conquests. That's just not going to be a thing. We're going to either recruit or just throw our hands up in the air and say whatever.
Or we'll act as little spoiler and go and just fuck with people.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
not a bad
easily.
thing either that little guilds can do.
Yeah.
No, I could easily see us doing
We
that.
can totally hold at least one sector of a planet. There's no
Oh,
reason
yeah.
why not.
Oh, yeah, we all put on our PvP gear and just go screw up somebody's plans. Yeah, definitely do that.
In fact, that seems more like us do guerrilla
Oh,
style.
Oh yeah.
And like we're gonna sit here and wait for people to attack us.
But little
Right, Tenebris? DNT? Fuck
But-
defending?
smaller
Yep.
guilds, like, I can't think of an example right now, but, like, I don't know, raid guilds who only do hard mode and, just groups of friends or whatever, I think they're going to take their roster and go into another guild who's, like, got a stronger foundation and are active in it if they want to participate in a meaningful sense in Stronghold, or Conquest.
I think this is more worth talking about once we get some actual eyes on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just,
I mean,
this is
it's
all
a lot of
wild
speculation.
speculation. The other item on this vendor is a mount. It requires 10 dark projects, which I don't know how much you guys know about the crafting.
That's a lot.
It's
Yeah, I want to
wild.
talk about that. Are you going to be able to sell that stuff? Like, I was looking at the crafting stuff you
me
can
take a
craft in the
look.
requirements, but I mean, is this just going to be another avenue for us to make cash off of?
Possibly. Let me look at the requirements for dark project, and it'll tell me if it's BOP. It is not BOP. Here's what it takes to make a dark project, at least for Arms Tech. I don't think it's any different for others. It takes 3 synthetic energy matrices, grade 8 purple, 6 alien data cubes, which is grade 7 blue, 6 biometric crystal alloys, grade 7 blue as well, 1 war supplies invasion force, which is a whole other thing, and 3 Rakata energy nodes, which is grade 7 purple.
You think they're doing that to clean out the market because there's so much just random crap lying around?
Possibly. But there's no way we have all that. There's no way we have a significant amount of that stuff just lying around. I think we have.
You can buy almost all of it with the pack stuff.
We have the alloys, but we don't have much of the other stuff. We probably have the matrices too. The other shit is not that common though.
Let me go look at the GTN and see what's on there.
I don't even remember what Ricotta energy nodes and alien data cubes drop off of.
Karaga's Palace,
EV.
level bosses, yeah, EV, KP
Well, we're
bosses.
gonna be okay, and I think it's any. I'm gonna want to do those things anyway, just for like shit like the Karaga hut statue. So that may be one way we're gonna be getting those things, but like I said, that's just for one dark project. The command walker the thing that I was getting at, costs 10 dark projects.
Good
So
thing
that
Devast and I have so many cartel pack extra pieces.
And that's just an individual mount? Is that what that is?
That is an individual mount, can only be activated on planets that your guild controls. Movement speed increases based on the rank of your piloting skill. Reduces incoming damage by 15%. It also looks pretty sweet. If you guys have the stream open, I'll preview it.
Speaking of mounts, did you try and put any of the op mounts in your house, your apartment? Because I couldn't find them to put them in there.
Yes, I have Titan 6 in my garage. My apartment is publicly listed if you want to go look.
That actually looks badass.
That looks like the thing from RoboCop.
It actually does look like Ed 209.
Yeah, it's
You're right.
Ed 209 without the guns.
Oh, it's got guns on it.
Yeah,
They're
but it
just
doesn't
smaller.
have the big cannons that Ed 209 had.
But no, it looks pretty fucking cool, and the effect is something that no other mount in the game, as far as I know, is going to have. Although the limitation that you can only ride it on planets that your guild owns is strange, which makes me think that you're going to be able to, like, own a planet for a significant amount of time. Maybe. Or there might be something worth doing once you've conquered a planet, which is the other thing.
It'd be kind of odd, though, with that kind of a requirement, you'd have to have it saved up for when you actually got the planet to start. By the time you built it, you
Oh,
might
man.
not have the planet.
You have
I'd be
no
pissed.
idea. Like, that... We were talking about the raid requirement, or the raid supplies requirements to make a dark project. War supplies invasion force is pretty significant itself. It requires that you have several of the crafting skills across your alts, and you have to funnel it into one invasion force. Like, Armstack can only make 2 of the 5 requirements for an invasion force.
But the invasion force is guild-wide, right? It's not individual-wide.
No, that's individual. You can make it by
Oh.
yourself. I have the mats on me to make 2 starship weapons. Like, it's just random shit. Like, it's grade 5 scavenge compound, and grade 6 scavenge compound, grade 9 scavenge compound. So,
How many of each?
8 of each. So yeah, it's not that significant. What is significant is that you need 1 of everything. From from practically every profession. But if every profession can make 2, then it's not so bad. It's still a big pain in the ass. It's more so the tedium of actually going to your crafters and logging on different characters.
Maybe they're trying to make the skills that are the non-crafting skills more worthwhile. Because right now you make dick money off of being anything but a crafting skill.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's going to drive the price of any item you can get from scavenging or from
okay.
anything else. It's going to drive that price way the fuck up.
Well, this is the other thing, and this ties into housing too. There's Mark 1 through 3 of fabrication, prefabrication things, and they all use different levels of mats. But it's not like the quality necessarily goes up. Yes, Mark 3 is the best, but there are unique decorations you can only get with Mark 1 and 2. And all of those use lower level mats, like level 2 and 2 through 6, basically. So that's, I think, tying into something you said earlier, which they're just trying to clear out all this old shit. But I don't know, I think if that's their goal, it's going to backfire, and people are going to get more old shit, so they can make all this stuff.
Sure.
But yeah. Other than that, I think we've hit on housing and guild conquests pretty hard. If anything has anything else they want to bring up about that, other than the fact that Death and Tax's ship is going to be called the Sexecutor.
Fuck yeah, sexy.
It better be. It will never clear an op again.
Okay. I'm going to do a really quick sidebar. Actually, no, I'm going to save this for a forum thread. Fuck that. PvE in 2.9 consists of Manon by itself. If anybody cares about spoilers, y'all are free to mute the stream for like, I don't know, a half hour to whenever. Or just go away because we're talking about PTS anyway.
Just go away.
It's not any big spoiler. I think this was hinted at pretty strongly in Part 1 of Forged Alliances. The enemy in this whole arc is the Revenites. And Darth Arcus is working with the Republic guy on the other end of the Forged Alliances questline. Not Theron Shan, but the Colonel guy. Both of them are Revenites. And as far as lore go, that seems like the most obvious sign to me that the villain of the next expansion is Revan. Like, I don't see them building up the Revenites as a faction without having him be the final boss. Which is predictable, which is bad, but I kind of see that as them writing themselves into a corner. I don't know if any of y'all care about the lore.
I care. I like the story in this game.
I have 845 codex entries.
Good
But
God.
do you read them, Dom?
Whoa.
Who has more codex entries, Tahiri or Dom?
Probably Dom.
Thierry.
Me. No, to hear
Oh.
achievements.
Holy crap! Damn. Might as well go get them all, Dom. Come on.
Yeah.
On another note, Manon is fucking gorgeous. I've got it up on stream right now if y'all haven't been. I can confirm there is no swimming, because when you jump into the water, you die.
Maybe you jumped into the wrong water.
Jumped into most of the water. The sign out in the front, because Atto City's gone. This is a new platform. The Sith Empire apparently bombed Atto City. The sign out front tells you not to jump in any of the fountains, but nothing bad happens to you, which is really a missed opportunity, because you should really aggro a lot of Selkath by jumping in the fountains.
You just sink hardcore when you jump in the water.
Yeah, Rom. Are you sure you're just not allergic to the water? That weird disease?
Is that
Get
a
the
thing?
rashes. Yeah, it's an actual disease.
I'm done with this game. You can't swim at Manon. I'm done.
I know.
My immersion.
I bet... Okay. Here's the other thing. There is pretty much confirmation that... there's confirmation that Manon will be expanded at some point. It's not confirmation from any official source, but I'm about to go there right now on the actual planet. There is a place across from the Flashpoint entrance that specifically alludes to it being an expansion district. No Republic are on this platform, by the way. If anybody looks at the world map, the platform across from us is very likely to be the Republic one. Over here. Anyway, I'm reading the sign right now. This transport terminal is presently closed for maintenance. We apologize for any inconvenience. Terminal recommencement date under consideration. So there is very likely to be more business to do on Manon outside this Flashpoint, especially since they had like a whole big... They had this whole big area made and spent a lot of time on it. Which, if you like Manon, and I kind of do, I think it looks great, is good.
I had
Yeah, I think it
speculated
looks
that
nice.
this would be the basis for next expansion before having seen those signs.
Yeah.
I think it'll be expanded into a daily zone. I don't think this will be the big planet for the expansion.
You don't?
No, because of the stuff I already talked about with you guys. The stuff Miner was saying.
As far as the tactical itself,
I do
is
think that this
concerned,
will be like the new
It's fine.
quote-unquote Oricon, where you have like your dailies and then maybe there's like a hub for operations or something.
Well,
Thank God.
if you go down the hallway a little bit, it sort of opens up into... It doesn't really open up. It's just cut off by a door. So that could be an instance portal. It could be really anything. So it could just be another flashpoint. It might not even be a daily area. We don't know.
They're going to have a prison area in a courtroom. It's going to be just like KOTOR.
A courtroom.
It could be, but I doubt it.
It'd be awesome if they brought in those justices and everything.
Anyway, speaking to the tactical itself, I don't know how many of y'all have run it, but I ran it myself a couple days ago. And I soloed everything up to the second boss. It is definitely harder than your normal tactical. One thing that the first boss did that I really enjoyed was he has these two droid ads. They have a grapple ability. It's like a Wild Star Telegraph. It's a line move, so you can get out of it. But what they have on them is a buff that says, essentially, hold on. What they have is a buff on them essentially that reads, if you get hit with this while you're entrenched or hunkered down, it'll remove the entrenched and hunker down, and that seems like a pretty good way to get around sniper bullshit, which I kind of want if it means that they're in turn going to increase my DPS. But the other side of that coin is, I don't know, people are going to be using their abilities and expect them to work.
I'm actually excited about this. If that means that as a Marauder I can't use Undying Rage to cheese orbs, and Arsenal can't use Chaff Flare and things of that nature, then I am all for it. Like, as long as there's a tooltip for when the first time you wipe while you're doing progression, you could have read that shit and it says, this will negate blah blah blah, then I'm fine with it, 100%.
I think it's good and bad. Like, it does homogenize things, though, if you think about it.
I mean, if snipers can't use Entrench, if I can't use Undying, and if, like, you know, just for those things, then you're not forcing group comps as much as you would have if they did work in an op.
That is true. By homogenizing things, you definitely avoid that. The problem is everything starts to be samey.
Yeah, that's true. They've got to find a way to do it without... I mean, I want them to do that for certain boss fights, but they need to find a way to do it without having to resort to that as their only option.
I think there's room to do that, but not, like, go overboard. Okay, that's all I can think of for 2.9. If anybody wants to say anything about Manon, feel free to. Otherwise, we'll move on to 2.10.
I'm a big story nerd, so I'm glad that we're getting more major story, because I really enjoyed the whole like track to the Dreadmasters, so hopefully this next arc will be equally interesting.
Yeah, to that end, I think this is better done than the lead up to Rise of the Hutt Cartel, which was nothing. If this is all this Forged Alliances stuff is leading up to the next expansion, then that's way better. Okay. 2.10 is supposed to be a class change patch, but it's not supposed to be 3.0 when they're going to wildly change way more stuff, I would assume. My question is, what needs to be changed that can't wait for 3.0?
I don't know if needs to be changed, but I bet money they're going to fix Carnage's RNG reliance on procs. I think that'll be an easy change for 2.10, and it'll be one they highlight. I think they're also going to make subtle changes to lethality operatives.
Deception. Just gonna get some love, I hope.
Would Deception be fixed with a small change, or does it need an overhaul for 3.0?
Deception would be at least something that resembles Viable, at least on the lower end of the Viable spectrum, with some minor changes.
Like turn it into a quasi-Carnage just for assassins?
Yeah, I mean, it just needs force. Like, it just doesn't have the force to sustain its damage at all. I don't imagine it would be difficult to do something like change the talent. I'll tell you what it's called exactly. Saber Conduit, which currently has a 10-second rate limit. Just drop it to like 7-second or a 5-second rate limit, and it would be totally fine.
What I think they might do, and this is pie in the sky, I think snipers are finally going to see the compensation for the orbital nerf, and we're going to get it for like, I don't know, a month, and then 3.0 is going to come out, and then it's going to reset the field. That's my fan theory. Because
What do you think
remember,
they're going to change orbital, or they're going to make everything else hit more?
the compensation could be anything.
Sears a shot buff ammo.
Series of buff would be fine. Can anybody hear me? Okay, because my mama wasn't displaying, sorry. It could be anything. I don't care what it is, but they did advertise that to us as being part of a 2-part thing way back when they did it the first time.
What I can expect to see at least is some of classes like, I think, Pyromercs maybe, and Power Techs, and I don't necessarily know other examples, but I think they're going to furthermore remove RNG from certain DPS classes, like they've already started to do.
Lethality could use the RNG removed from Takedown, because there are still some times where it doesn't proc, which is outrageous.
Yeah, and it's unnecessary. It's like, it's going to proc 99 times out of 100. What's the point of having that one time it doesn't proc even be a possibility?
But, I mean, the way I see it, what with there being so little time between 2.10 and 3.0, I mean, I hope there's little time. I hope we're not sitting around waiting for it. I don't see the point of there being a 2.10. I don't see why they need to like change anything right now at the end of the content cycle. Especially when there's very likely not to be another PvP season.
Well, on that last dev stream, well, probably not the last one that I happened to watch in full, they did mention that they were going to touch snipers, assassins, and lethality operatives.
Really?
So.
Okay. That would be... I mean,
No
I would
love for
appreciate that.
Juggernauts?
Are Juggernauts
are
core?
pretty much okay. I mean, their DPS is very, very, very slightly low compared to the other melee, but I mean, they're pretty fine.
See, but the difference is, like, they removed RNG from Juggernauts. So where most of the Juggernauts are at now is where most of the Juggernauts are at. There's no potential for them to pull more damage. There's almost no RNG left in Vengeance Jug, so where they're at is where they're at. They don't have... There's not a cap higher on them because of unlucky crits or procs and whatnot.
I don't think that there's a problem with their DPS right now. It's totally competitive. I mean, it could use another 50 to 100 at the top end, but I mean, it's nothing major.
Okay. Given that 2.10 is minor, that we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. 3.0 speculation. We're gonna like veer it away from lore for a little bit because we are not SWTOR minor. I want to talk about what class changes we want to see.
I don't know what we want to see, but they're definitely going to touch Alacrity. They've been talking about that since 2.0 came out.
Yeah, that's actually a broader subject. Combat system changes. Alacrity does need attention because
Oh, maybe
it's-
they'll put numbers on the commando energy. That'd be awesome.
I would like
Yes.
I would like them to get rid of Bloodthirst for Marauders, and I main a Marauder. I think that it's a crutch that so many raid groups use that don't actually need it, and they think they need it. Because one of the biggest reasons that you will never, even with Madness being so good, like, you're not going to see people take a Marauder out for an Assassin, even if the DPS is higher, because, well, Assassins don't have Bloodthirst. I want them to get rid of Bloodthirst. It's not a net positive in the game's meta. It's annoying.
I actually think they won't do that. I think they're going to go the other direction and give more classes raid-wide buffs like that.
I want to see assassins get crit buff to the raid, using their like an equivalent of a shelter for the other trees.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Oh, that'd be insane.
More crit.
Although, if we're talking about that in the meta, Tenebris, if you can do a crit buff, my Marauder could run full power and do retarded damage.
I'm talking on the
Depends
order
on the
of
significance of the
1
crit
to
buff.
2%.
Oh, you mean like a small crit buff? You don't mean like a Bloodthirst percentage base?
No.
No, I'm talking
think
a
they're
static 1 to 2%.
I think that would be a good way to encourage class diversity. If every advanced class brought something different, and is there enough room for every class to bring something different? I don't think so.
Well, most classes already do bring something different.
As far as buffs go?
Yeah, I mean, you have Mercs, which have an actual good off heal, which no other DPS class does. I mean, snipers have bubble.
Sork.
Well, that's
Okay,
what I'm saying. Most
I was
classes.
thinking of,
I mean,
like-
Sorks can off bubble, which I mean is kind of eh.
Sorks
Okay.
don't have... One thing I've always thought about with Sorks that kind of sucks, although their Madness DPS is so good that I don't care anymore, but they have almost, as a DPS, they have almost no defensive utility that matters outside of Barrier, which has a ridiculous cooldown.
Are we just talking about
You
utility
sort of
in general
pull.
then?
You
Because
could
I-
pull and you could dark heal if
Yeah, that's
needed.
what I was gonna say. I assume from a developer standpoint, pull is the sorcerer raid utility.
But I mean, personally speaking, like for instance, I can Cloak of Pain, I can Saber Ward, I can Undying. Like I have a number
You're
of
melee.
things.
You are melee.
Yeah,
Well, that's true. That is true.
and they have force feed to get in range of the pool. I mean, think about the bridge in Council. If you launch way the fuck down there, if we had a Sork to pull that tank back much faster,
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know what would happen if you pulled that tank over Bestia. And that debuff hadn't fallen off, that'd be weird.
Do the buffs need to be raid wide? Because I'm looking at chat and somebody. Okay, yeah, you guys are talking about Intercede.
No, I mean that's a pretty good buff.
It's pretty
That's a
good.
very powerful buff.
It's pretty good, but it's
damage
targeted.
reduction.
Yeah, so targeted damage reduction is really good. It's the only reason
Yeah.
I've cleared Tyrants with some groups. I intercede the person who has Affliction on cooldown, and it makes the healing so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Me paying one of my globals of DPS to make someone survive is a completely fair trade and an excellent
Yeah.
piece of
So
utility.
your answer would be no. It doesn't have to be a raid wide thing.
Or
No,
I mean, you could even
I don't
be
think
something
so.
similar to Shelter. You know, you don't. It's not necessarily raid wide, but it could be, used that way, or all the way down to Intercede, where it's up to an individual.
Well, I think assassin tanks would be attractive even if they didn't have shelter.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I'm saying something similar to that, where it's just come here type of thing. But I mean, I think you see some form of utility per each class, whether it's a change to a single target or it's to the raid or whatever. But it's still going to be affecting somebody else other than yourself.
It has to
You know.
have some kind of use.
Mhm.
Okay, beyond raid wide buffs, what's missing from each class that you think it needs? Back in 2.0, or back before 2.0, snipers had basically no mobility, and so they give us roll, and it's pretty much perfect. Like I think it's the best new thing that they introduced, as far as abilities go. What is but I can't think of anything a sniper is lacking now other than damage, and maybe a way to apply armor pin outside of using a shitty ability.
The sniper is an interesting thing to say because snipers may have a lower DPS ceiling than almost any other class currently in the game, or the lowest class, but they can translate from dummy to boss better than almost any class. Like, it's easier for you to put up your numbers than it is for many other classes. So,
Well-
like you being unable to hit 4K even with full 186, like, that doesn't matter in the meta when you can still out DPS almost any class on a boss fight because you have better uptime.
Well, yeah, but that's more the melee range thing. Most range classes have better uptime because they're range.
Sniper, as far as I'm aware, has better uptime than every class because 35 meters is better than 30.
It's not significantly better though. A Sork will still beat me on Dread Council, and so will a Merc if played properly. Maybe not in phase 2 because he doesn't have much cleave, but a Sork does. A Sork will kick my ass.
Yeah, but you'll kick a Sork's ass from a standpoint of defensive utility in that fight.
Is
As
that-
in, you don't explode.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like yes,
And shield.
A Sork can do theoretically can do more DPS in phase 2 than a sniper can, and looking at Melis's phase 2 can attest to that. But at the same time, like, it would be inherently harder to heal a group composition DPS with a Sork than if you had a sniper with the cooldown snipers have.
Shield probe OP.
The other thing that they seem to base the new abilities off of in 2.0 was, does it fit the class motif? Like, I'd say Mercenaries got a pretty good one that fits their kit. Juggernauts definitely did. So, if you can think of something that would fills a gap for your class, then what do you think your class should be able to do that it can't currently do?
I know
I have
Dom
a
and I
whole
have
list
talked
of
about
things.
it. Sorry,
that
go.
Jetpack
I say I have a
is
whole list for every
number
class.
But I know Dom and I have talked about, just from a gap closure standpoint, it'd be cool if you had just a rocket boost type of thing to pump you 20 meters as a Merc or whatever it is,
So you want
Jetpack.
roll.
basically. But in jet boost
Does
form.
that not feel samey?
hydraulics seems pretty much useless, and except for not getting knocked away in random places.
Maybe this is like a.
What if they change
Sorry, go ahead.
hydraulics? I'm sorry. What if they change hydraulics to allow you to cast while moving? For mercs.
Holy shit!
Oh,
Heavy
Well,
on
aren't
that
they
would
already-
be pretty
aren't they
nice,
already
like they did with
doing
elemental
something like
shamans
that?
and WoW.
Say what?
Didn't I already see some ability or something that was being changed that made it so you could cast while moving for a few seconds on a merc?
No. Not
Trying to
that.
remember
What?
what it was.
No,
I think you're talking about power surge.
Power surge
and
is
they
one
Only
GCD.
fix the interrupt after you cast it.
Ah, right.
You get like 6 seconds of interrupt immunity.
No, but maybe this is like just an RP thing to say, but I think there'd be a cooler way for mercs to gap close or roll, quote unquote, than using jet boost, and it would be a new ability where you grapple to somewhere on the map.
That'd be cool too.
That'd be
like
awesome.
you want like a free form targeting ability? Because that would be
Like
be
you
different
know,
than
like,
anything
you
else in the game already.
What you're saying is you want reverse phase walk,
Yeah, exactly. I want a reverse phase walk. I think that'd be kind of cool.
but then you have phase walk.
I guess
Yep.
I
I'm
guess
saying
it
if
would be
you're a merc.
comparable to if anyone's like familiar with WoW, it'd be like Force Leap on Warriors now, where you just freeform target somewhere and jump to it. Instead, you just want it to be like a grapple pole, but
Yeah,
same idea.
that's why I said it's probably RP sounding what I'm mentioning, because it's like a grapple pull could be the same as other things.
That's literally the same as phase walk.
No, I think it's called Heroic Leap in WoW. And
That's what I meant.
Heroic Leap was a targeted AoE that would take your character to where you clicked. I think you can't do that in this game because you could get to places that are not intended.
That'd be so much fun.
The reason they introduced
Yeah,
it
it
to
would.
Hashtag Nefra.
the reason they introduced it in WoW is because of flying mounts, so it made that moot, and they had to redesign all their architecture for other shit.
Solo
I mean, with that
parkour
mind.
action.
Yep. I would get to the top of the walker in EC and just sit there.
But anyway, I think as far as mercs go, I think I like the cast while moving thing a little bit better. Just while hydraulics is on, anyway. Does that fix their issues in PvP though?
It helps.
It helps a lot, but there's still. I mean,
It'd be great for arenas because the length of hydraulics and the amount of time that mercs die in the first 5 to 10 seconds of a fight because they can't do anything. I mean, that'd be pretty good.
Essentially,
If it made
turns
it
them into lightning
uninterruptible,
sorks that can't be interrupted.
The problem
Yeah.
is you see a merc pop the hydraulics and all that, you're gonna
You have to
stun.
stun. Well, that's fine though, because then you have to stun a hydraulic merc.
Yeah, and then they can't stun something else.
It's much like you have to low slash a shrouded sin, or is just going to roll your sork's face.
What about
Just
some
all
kind of
over his
mechanic like mercs where maybe it's a talent that reduces the effects of like an interrupt? Like, what is it, 5-second lockout when you get interrupted? Maybe that's reduced in a sense, because you...
Or it just
only-
restarts the cast bar, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe you can cast Tracer Missile again right away. As soon as that GCD's up, they just interrupted the one that you were on.
oh no, I like that idea, Ten. Like if you're interrupted like 2/3 of the way through your cast and the interrupt falls off, you have only 1/3 to kill.
No. I mean, like, you just have to restart the cast. There's no lockout.
Yeah, there's no lockout.
yeah.
For my class, I can't really think of anything for general, but for like engineering, I feel like engineering could use like a turret of some kind. And the way I envision it working is like it fires blaster bolts at whatever I have on, whatever I have my, what's it called? Interrogation probe on.
I like that. That would be a
that'd be cool.
change.
It'd be a good single target thing too, because that is, I mean, engineering single target outside of rollbang is hilarious. It would also synergize pretty well with cluster bombs, which don't explode unless they're being shot by blasters. And in raids like ours, other than me, only Crack uses blasters, and only sometimes.
Hey.
Preferably not using them ever, but...
Again, Crack only sometimes.
Well, if you ever raid with me, Rom, I guarantee I would use blasters when I'm not supposed to in my rotation. Worst merc NA.
No, don't do that. Also,
I would
unload
like-
is in
I'll start
rotation,
using
so it
more
doesn't matter.
blasters.
You
Yeah.
don't have.
I
No,
would-
it's fine. You don't have to. It's just one. I don't even use that spec in like real fights. It doesn't matter.
I can
Traxxas
see it
OP.
now. Cac, just use explosive probe. Help me out here.
Sorry,
Add
Ken.
my stats, Cat,
Sorry
please.
you died, Ken. I had to go DPS Rom's thing.
But yeah,
It's the engineering equivalent to a shatter shot. I need the Merc heals on my target.
Just rapid shot it. Just rapid shot it.
I think the way that would work, it'd just be like a passive damage thing, like shoulder cannon, or not so much passive, but it's something that you use and maybe has a cooldown, or maybe you have to place it somewhere. But if you place it somewhere, I don't want you to be able to kill it. I think that would be too trivial.
Well,
At least
then
in
that would be
PvP.
very, very strong in PvP.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I have to spend one global running over to a turret and killing it, that's huge for a sniper.
Yeah, but it also, if it's a significant part of their single target, then it hurts them a lot to do it. So
They could
there's an
make it a
opportunity cost
PvE
there.
only. They could
Yeah,
make it
the-
PvE only, like they
No,
do
the
it like they
opportunity
do
cost
with
there would hurt
Relics.
me a lot. Like, I would be slowed the entire time, would have to close the distance to your turret, have to kill it, and then again close the distance to you. By which time I'm sure you're, out in Africa DPSing me to shit.
Okay. Well, that's my idea for snipers anyway.
Oh, that's a cool idea. Shrapnel, the tracer missile that causes AoE bleeds.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's in Realm Stream.
Yeah. I don't know. Does anybody else have any ideas for what they want their classes to do?
Assassins
3.0.
need to provide a way for other people to do more damage to their target.
Oh, yeah,
Screw
ties
that,
in-
I'm
ties into
selfish.
Into your little idea.
Whether
of,
whether it's via phase walk or using assassinate on a target, exposes their weakness for X seconds. Like, we actually have a talent that does that. It just doesn't work on real things that you kill. Like nerve wracking and deception causes things that you stun to take 6% more damage, but you can't stun bosses. So it's trivial.
Hey,
That's-
Tenebrous, what if they made it to where Assassin DPS, Madness is your oh shit, I'm putting up stupid, retarded, catastrophic numbers, and then Deception gives you a decently lower DPS threshold, but they have a ton of raid-wide DPS utility, not defensive utility, but straight up, like, you have a better armor pen, and you can give it to the raid, you can have,
You
like...
want assassins to be bards?
Yeah, why
There
not?
were
Fuck,
specs-
Deception, why not?
There were specs in WoW, and I'll give you an example. During Wrath of the Lich King, that were nominally DPS, but they did lower DPS than the alternatives, but they provided very important utility. The example I'm going to use is Demonology Warlocks, who did less damage than Destro, Destruction, and Affliction, but whenever their demon crit, everybody in the raid got 10% of the Warlock's spell power, and the Warlock had the most spell power in the entire raid.
There's also like the Shadow Priest has always been
Yeah.
utility based.
WoW has moved away from that, and I think they moved away from that for a reason. I think they've moved into a spec should do roughly the same amount of damage philosophy. I can't tell you what their reasoning is. I thought Demonology Warlock was really fun, and I played the hell out of it. But it did do less damage outside of certain scenarios. Like, it was great at AoE, but it wasn't the best single target. It was respectable, and it definitely increased your raid DPS to the point where it was more than what you were losing by not being the optimal spec. But I don't know if that's the way they want to go, and that's really hard to balance. It's definitely also suboptimal for small groups.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a 16-man thing only, really, because you can't afford to lose that much damage in general. Or the
Yeah.
amount of damage you'd have to lose to not completely break 16-man by giving 9 to 10 DPS tons more damage.
Yeah, that's the other problem I see with it in WoW is 25 people, so you could easily tell how much better it was. With only 8 people in an operations group, I don't know that you can get away with having utility specs that are nominally damage. I think you just have to bake it in to damage specs that are supposed to be optimal. Okay. The last topic I've got is this little planned debate that I have for legacy gear and how I think it shouldn't be a thing. They have to put the genie back in the bottle. And my reasoning is that it shortens the content cycle to maybe an unacceptable level, because you don't actually have to raid on a character you want to gear, other than get their implants and Iran relics.
I think I have I have mixed feelings. Like, for instance, I am glad that Legacy Storage doesn't let you put relics, earpiece, and implants in, because part of like Legacy Storage and Strongholds, like part of that is let's give crafters more things to do, and if you let that happen, you cripple crafting in a way that wasn't necessary. As for Legacy Gear, I don't know. I'm okay with it to a degree. Like, it doesn't break progression for me personally. But I will say this, and this is not, I want to preface this is not taking away from their ability to kill shit. Zors still would have had world first on the things they had world first. However, if Zors did not have 5 lockouts a week to funnel gear to mains, which they did, I'm not saying that that's a problem, it was how the game worked. If they didn't have that, and almost the entire raid wasn't full 186 from outside of Relics, Earpiece, and Main Hand, Phase 2 would have been an actual thing that was harder than it was for them. Like, if all they had was, like, if their mains only had 1 lockout a week, and the gear they got for their mains was once a week, they would be nowhere near best in slot at all. And they still would have gone world first, but they would have killed it in a longer period of time than 3 hours. Not because they weren't good enough, but because the DPS requirement in Phase 2 wouldn't have been face roll easy. Because as Mila said in a previous podcast, it seems that DP was not made with 186 gear as the benchmark. 180
Yes.
gear was. And the less 186 you have, the more difficult Phase 2 becomes.
That was part of my reasoning too, in that's why I think it shortens the content cycle.
I don't mind Legacy Gear in a sense. It was like being able to send gear between my Power Tech and a Vanguard. I don't like, like the gear that's on Drummond Cost, the stuff that is specific, like Bounty Hunter and Sith Inquisitor and whatnot. If all Legacy Gear was somehow like that in a sense, where you could have your set that was Bounty Hunter and Vanguard, so you could switch between your 2 Bounty Hunter, your 2 Power Techs, and then your Vanguard have 1 set of gear. Cool. And then make it so literally you can only buy that stuff on your Power Tech and your Vanguard for that sort of benefit there, rather than just having it so I can get gear for my Sorcerer on my Power Tech. I don't like that part. I don't mind being able to kind of have 2 of the same tune share gear. I don't like being able to send gear from one tune that's not even for my class to a different class.
2 tunes being able to share the same gear, I'm fine if it's cross-faction. I'm not as fine when it's, I have 5 Marauders, my Marauder will be geared out faster than anyone else. Like, that's the part where I think that it shortens the cycle. If it's the same, roughly the same lockout, if it's the same class, same faction, it is effectively the same character, just a different lockout.
And to that point, this is all taking place in a world that actually has optimal gear from tokens. Like, this would all take place if they also introduced 2 sets for every class, basically, or 3 if you're tanking and healing.
You would need like 4 if you're tanking and healing, because absorb defense.
Sure, they need to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think that the way if they want to ever eliminate Legacy Gear is you have to, when you get a piece, you have to get the ability
best
to
in
trade it
slot.
for any armoring, any mod, and any enhancement. That
Yes.
is appropriate for your class.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that does not work, because it will take inordinate, disgusting amounts of time to gear properly.
Yes, it should be just as fast, okay. You should be able to gear out 1 character in a relatively short amount of time, not as short as it takes now. But you shouldn't have to, like, rot enhancements and mods that aren't optimal. You should be able to get what you want, especially with how modular the gear is, which would also justify keeping the gear modular in a world without legacy gear. There was an interesting compromise I talked about with somebody yesterday who said that maybe they could make it so that nightmare pieces, nightmare armorings, enhancements, hilts, barrels, and shit like that could not be put in legacy gear. I think that that's a pretty good compromise, as opposed to trying to put the genie back in the bottle in legacy gear. Because I don't mind so much people gearing out their alts in hard mode or com gear. But I don't really like a world in which I have to raid 5 times a week to be in VIS so I can compete on even footing.
See, they could do that easily with making it so every tier that they have, their nightmare tier, it goes up in rarity to that purple color or whatever it is, and then have it so that stuff can't be put in legacy gear.
Well, they could make it to where it's not even mods and enhancements. They could make nightmare gear augmentable, but not have mods. Have it be actually fucking gear. Like, just the shell is the gear. Yeah, like, only for nightmare.
I don't like that, though, because it forces you to look a certain way. So I think they can keep it the way it is, just don't let you put that stuff in legacy gear.
Yeah,
I don't know, I like legacy gear.
Which does that a lot less.
But, Cac, do you like it because of the fact that it makes it easier to optimize, or do you like it because... Like, alright,
I like it because the way I use Kakatu. So I use Kakatu, to help the guilder to run other stuff, but he was designed to have the same gear as Kak and be able to help out friends. That's what he was designed for. Yeah, I use him for Super Pug, or other times I use him to help other guilds out, and that's what he's designed for. He's designed for fun and help. He's not designed for progression. And yeah, he gives gear for Kak, but it's not the make or break gear. I don't run as much on him, But I could go on one of my other healers to help people out. I just have more fun on the Merc. And that's why it gives me that ability to go and play at a top-end tier with a character that I enjoy playing on more than the other healers with other people.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but I would also say to that end, we have to remember that you don't actually need necessarily, like, it helps, but you don't need top-end gear. Like, our Juggernaut Furion cleared Council with roughly Dreadforged gear. And I bet, Cac, that you could have made healing happen with Dreadforged gear. If the talent's there, the talent's there. But, so if you went on Kakatu, your numbers would be worse, but you're still Cac. You're still putting out heals the way Cac does, so I think the content still clears.
The other thing is, Cac, you would still be in hard mode gear under that compromise system. Also, your main would not have to sift through garbage pieces to put together a set.
But I mean, so part of that also is my main... Yeah, I'm still sifting through garbage shit, but it allows me to not roll on stuff so that somebody else can get gear.
I mean, to that end, we have legacy gear now, and we still have trouble getting some gear pieces for people, so it's not fully fixed.
No, I mean, I'm still 4 mods out of best in slot, and 2 relics, which obviously aren't legacy.
Yeah.
Legacy relic.
No, I mean,
God, that'd be
literally,
dumb.
but really though, if endgame implants, earpiece, and relics, if those did not exist for crafters, crafting would effectively be dead outside of strongholds.
Barrels and hilts.
I think there are better ways to do crafting, though.
Yeah, nothing but MK9 kits.
I mean, better than that, too. I don't see why we don't get another tier of augments every tier of gear.
I don't know either. We get 1 tier, apparently, per each expansion.
Which I don't like. That would definitely give crafters something to do. Maybe not arms tech. I mean, because the arms tech...
They can still craft MK9 kits, though.
Pretty shitty. Yeah, but not as efficiently as Armor Mech can. And Armor Mech already has these stat things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's sort of my theory on all legacy gear. I use legacy gear just like everybody else does. I don't like a world in which I have to do what they did. I don't blame them for doing it, because that's definitely the smart thing to do.
Right, they still would have... Even if they hadn't done that and they weren't full 186, they still would have cleared it day 1.
They still would have... Yeah, they still would have been world first. Yeah, but I'll say this. My thought on it is, if you do legacy gear and you're not going to get rid of it, I'm fine with that. But Nightmare needs to be fucking balanced around the idea that you can do that. Because right now, it's balanced around the idea that, they're only going to run once a week. And actually, they're going to have hard mode gear for Nightmare Council.
I've been preaching that for a long time. You shouldn't be able to clear a final boss until you're full 186 or top tier gear across the board. I would love for it to be that hard.
Well,
I never
mean,
played WoW, so
I
I
know,
don't
Yeah, I
I
didn't
know,
play
but
WoW
it's
either.
that's
I
like
would love for it to be hard enough where, yes, some people can, but the majority of everybody can't kill. The majority of the people who do progression can't kill the end of the boss in that tier until they're pretty much maxed out. Like, unless you're just that elite. I would love for it to be that hard, because it would be so much more fun.
So then does that mean that you guys are like fighting for more fights, more stressful towards the damage and healing?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
most of the complaints I remember, at least when I complain about PvE content, is that most of the fights just aren't that complex. They're solely, for the most part, just can you do enough damage, can you do enough healing? There's mechanics, but the mechanics are lackluster 99% of the time.
Let's be real here, real talk. DPS is not a thing that requires high output on 99% of all fights in Nightmare tier currently. Like, for one fight for literally 2 minutes, it's a thing. Everything else, you can basically just sort of do a rough rotation and stay alive. If we're talking about actually making shit hard, make the 2 minutes that mattered in Council the whole fight. Make the oh shit healing that happens like in phase 3 where like the knockback does considerably more damage. Make that the whole fight. And then I'm fine with whatever. But my issue with Nightmare right now is that there are too many fights that are not actual Nightmare. They are hard mode plus, hey guys, have you ever heard of a purple circle? Because we got one for you.
And it does 2k damage, but okay.
I don't think we can talk Calpheus with any perspective on what Nightmare is, though. I mean, that's a hard mode fight. Mass or storm mode fight. Mass is a hard mode fight. Mass is a Nightmare fight.
Or we can talk about Raptus, where somehow you can kill the boss or even survive, failing a DPS challenge and a heal challenge.
You can fail
Yeah.
2 DPS challenges and be fine.
I
In
want
Nightmare-
you guys to fail DPS challenges. I'm bored.
In Nightmare, it should be an auto wipe. That is my opinion. If you fail a DPS check where it is literally a quote-unquote challenge, you should auto wipe. It should be like Calpheus when like you don't kill it in 2 plants.
Here's my problem with that, though, because you put all the fucking challenge of the fight into the DPS challenge, and then the rest of the fight's boring.
No, it should be you fail a challenge, he enrages and kills you.
Yeah, like, but here's the thing.
Any
the
challenge.
The heal challenge in Raptus isn't a joke. Like, there are good healers who still fail it when they don't maximize the efficiency of each GCD. Like, CAC will tell you, if they do it 1 or 2 GCDs late where they get their cleanse off at a bad time, they'll fail it. If they get a lack of crits, they'll fail it. With DPS, it's not really like that unless you have a gimped DPS without the ability to adrenal and the other person adrenal the first time. Like that.
There's
Like other
not
than
a
that,
cleanse
it's...
on the DPS challenge, is there?
No, there's not. There's an interrupt.
Cleanse.
There should be.
Well,
How
they
is my
should-
power tech gonna cleanse
how
anyone?
the fuck am I gonna
There
cleanse?
should not be, because you cannot guarantee that everybody's gonna have a cleanse when you go in there. That's not a thing.
It would be range
They-
DPS
but
or
no,
get
but
the
they
fuck
have the
out.
ability to target who is cleansable and who is not. Council proved that.
They,
So there
except
is a
when,
clean-
when everybody is cleansable, it will still go out.
I would have liked the DPS challenge more if there was more of like a crutch check, so there was 3 ads and only one person could attack an ad. So if the two of you
Oh,
tried to gang
yes.
up on an ad, it would wipe everyone. So 3 DPS each had their own ad, and if they couldn't kill it, it was obvious who the crutch was, and you'd have to.
That'd be
Although either makes it to where Madness Assassins can't use Crushing Darkness, or it makes Madness Assassins too powerful for a DPS challenge.
And the same with the
You
healer
just
one. There
space
could
them
be
enough
2 healer
so you
ads.
can do that. That's all.
How much do you have to space them, Tenebris? I don't actually know the range.
It's not that big. I mean, as long as they're spaced relatively. I mean, I can avoid hitting people who are whirlwinded in packs in PvP. So
You know,
the radius is 8 meters, so it's not.
if I had to solo my own monster in the DPS challenge, I would run Carnage for that fight, for the burst, if I had to solo it. But I don't have to, so there's no way I'm going to run that spec.
I'm gonna go back and disagree with CAC that you should need full BIS to fight the last boss. There were gear checks way back in WoW, and they were not fun just because you had to wait to even attempt the boss because you didn't have the gear for it. Also,
It would extend the cycle.
The gear, yeah, that's artificial though.
How about this? If there is a hard gear check on final boss, then the 4 bosses before it need to be more fun than they currently are.
Sure.
I think it should be progressive gear checking the entire tier.
It should be something like, what is the highest dummy parse for each class? Take the average of that, like in BIS. That is the DPS check.
The average of the top 10 or whatever.
I mean,
Yeah, that is the DPS check with a tier below. So like the 180 BIS parse for every single class averaged is DPS check.
I'm fine with that.
So you can outplay it if you're really fucking good, or you need more gear and then you'll beat it.
And that's assuming they even look at Torpars.
I'd be
But
surprised if they didn't.
if you think of like Phase 2 for Council, that's like literally the only fight where we can kind of consider it to be balanced in a sense. It almost looks like they did that. Like 3,800 was pretty standard. Or it was probably, I can't remember for sure, but I think it was fairly high or at least above average for most classes in 180s.
In 180s,
Right, but they
3,800
should
was
have
roughly...
They should have balanced DP for 186.
Yeah, they should have. Like, 3,800, I know,
So would you
as
expect
Annihilation
all 4
pre-buff.
DPS to do like 4.1k in Phase 2 to push it?
I think
4K.
they should do 3.9
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
4K, 394K.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like since I know my class is capable of doing that, the fact that I did less than that in our kill means that in a perfect world that shouldn't have been enough.
But also, then think about it. Tank damage. So should this check count for tank and healer damage too? Because, like,
Yeah. Well,
So-
the check is raid wide DPS
The way
requirement.
that tanks work in this game is really fucking weird, because if you make spikes too large to check your gear, then assassins just die. Because it's a 45% chance you don't shield it and a 20% chance you don't defend it, so you just die.
yeah, paper gets cut hard.
Or you can do it such that it's lots and lots of little hits, in which case the law of large numbers says that assassins don't die ever and take no damage.
I mean, there's another reason, like the comments are talking about how things get cleared in 1 day or 2 days or something like that. Like, there's another reason that stuff dies quick, and it doesn't actually have to do with stuff being too easy. It has to do with, actually, every guild has done it for 8 months, and it means that they only have to learn not a whole fight, but 1 to 2 mechanics per phase in a fight. If Nightmare
There's normally
came
not
out-
even mechanics. It's normally just a
Well, yeah.
little more stressful damage
But, like,
and healing.
Like, let's say hypothetically
There's new
that
mechanics.
DP
I'm
launches. Let's say DP launches in 2.4, and Nightmare does too. I guarantee Council would have taken way longer than a day for even Zors to clear, because they wouldn't have had 8 months of experience in hard mode. Like, it would have been extremely difficult to clear in even a week or two. Like, because Council Nightmare is actually a much harder fight than Council hard mode. Like, if stuff happened at the same time, we wouldn't see guilds clearing at week 1. It would not happen.
If we're going into should have, what should have happened? They should not have geared Dread Palace to be cleared in 186s. What they should have actually done is release it at the same time as Dread Fortress. And kept it the same.
Yeah, if you're not going to scale it for 186s, don't release it after everyone had 8 weeks of getting 186s.
Yup. Now that is artificially stretching the content cycle, and it's something I complained about earlier. It's stupid, and they shouldn't have done it. It would have been actually an interesting progression race if there were 2 instances to go through. People would be making decisions.
Oh, people would have raged had we not killed Brontes first.
Whatever.
Go 4-5, 4-5.
Whatever. I mean, that would have
The
been,
rage would have
that's
been real.
honestly the smart play to do that. Because you get the gear, those fights are much easier than Brontes. Everybody would have done it. Because, pretty sure that in a world that you're testing both DP and DF on PTS, that people don't kill Brontes week 1. Or Council. If people have to divide their time anyway. But yeah, that's what I think they should have done. I don't know if they're going to
Didn't
do
they
that
do
again.
that originally? I'm trying to remember, like, way back when. Wasn't EV released with Nightmare and Harbor at the same time?
That was at game release, though. Also, Nightmare
Yeah.
at the end was bugged. So,
Right, it was bugged, but they did that method of Hard Mode Nightmare same time.
yeah, I don't
That
think you're going to
Justin
see
was
that
referring to.
again, though, because
But then
it's not
back
the way
then,
they did
and
Rise of the Hard
fairly
Cartel.
certain this is correct. Whatever, I didn't play the game right when it came out, but Nightmare was just upscaling of damage and health. There wasn't any new mechanics in EV, I don't believe, and from hard mode to nightmare. It was just extra health and extra damage, was it not?
Yeah, no,
I think so.
they've gotten better at upping the difficulty.
So, but yeah, like, if you want nightmare and hard mode to be released and you're saying they used to do it, well, they used to just scale the health up and scale the damage up, which I can only assume is not difficult at all. It take 20 minutes to say, okay, now this boss has 3 million more HP and this boss does X amount more damage.
Okay, that's all I've got on the show notes. If anybody has any other topics they want to bring up, now's the time.
I think 2.5 hours is about enough for me this week.
Alrighty.
Yep.
This is definitely going to be a regular thing. I don't know if we're going to do it every week, because I don't know if we're going to have enough to talk about every week. It's just the way the game works.
Next week we'll have to have Devasta. That's the way we can have content. Have Devasta talk about poop.
Devasta and Deeps can just go off.
We can just bi-weekly or something, maybe.
Yeah, maybe bi-weekly. This is something we can work out internally, and then we'll post on the forums and we'll tweet about it as to what kind of schedule we want to set. But thank you all for joining us on the inaugural edition of State of the Galaxy. Deeps, you didn't talk enough for loving to talk as much as you do. But I'm pretty happy with everybody's participation this week. So, if there's nothing else, that's it from Death and Taxes. Thank you all for watching. See you all next time.